For a movie called Cat People, there's a surprisingly small amount of cat people in the movie.
Climb on, sister. Are you riding with me or ain't you?
From the title, you might expect to see knockoff werewolves with whiskers, where the actors dress in bad costumes and play pretend. But you watch just those couple minutes and you get an idea of what the film is really like, and why it's actually considered one of the great horror movies of its time.
With one purpose only, to point out and make public the dishonesty, the downright villainy of boss Jim W. Geddes' political machine.
Cat People was released in 1942 by RKO, the same studio that had hired Orson Welles to make Citizen Kane only a couple of years earlier. The backlash and controversy around that film damaged the studio's reputation to the point where they changed their motto, showmanship in place of genius.
I have something more than a hope. And Jim Geddes has something less than a chance.
They resorted to making lower-budget genre films called B-movies. These were cheap, quick, hour-long pieces of entertainment that could be less of a gamble when it came to making their money back. A lot of these movies were noirs or horrors. Moody, campy, fun. Nobody really took them seriously. Nobody until a man named Val Lewton entered the scene. Before becoming a producer himself, Lewton worked under possibly the most notorious producer in Hollywood, David O. Selznick.
On to the back stairs!
His first screen credit was on Selznick's A Tale of Two Cities, right next to a name he would later work very closely with, Jacques Tourneur. Lewton learned the Selznick way of making movies, which was to be involved in every aspect of production. Usually we tend to think of the director as the be-all and end-all, but Lewton was different. He played an important hand in everything, from the scriptwriting to the casting to the shot structure. They were always his films, even though he was never fully satisfied with them. Cat People was his first film with RKO. He was assigned the task of making a horror movie like the hugely popular franchises coming out of Universal, but with only a fraction of the budget. The studio heads gave him the title and left the story up to him and his writer, DeWitt Bodine. What they came up with was a small-scale, domestic, psychosexual melodrama, also with cats. Irena Dubrovna, played by the French actress Simone Simon, believes she comes from a village cursed by witchcraft, a place where her ancestors turned into dangerous cats whenever they became jealous or enraged. While sketching a panther in its cage, she meets a man who is fictionally destined to fall in love with her.
Do you know that's funny?
Later, when she tells him the legend of her hometown, he dismisses it as a fairy tale.
When people in America are in love, or even think they're in love, they've usually kissed long ago.
Things take a more consequential turn, though, when Irena refuses to be intimate with him.
Irena, what's wrong?
She's afraid it will unleash her primal instincts, literally turning her into a panther if she submits to passion.
I've never wanted to love you.
This is played out quite gracefully in the scene where they're supposed to consummate their marriage. Nothing is explicitly said or shown, but just like the door that stands between them, we can feel the barrier that divides their relationship. The entire film has this unspoken edge to it. Characters talk to each other in typical movie fashion, but there's a subtext here that's more evident than in a lot of other films that were coming out at the time.
Torment me.
Irena's inner battle raises questions.
And the tread of their feet.
Is she really cursed, or is it a lie she's convinced herself to believe in?
I have no peace.
If so, what is she trying to cover up? The movie leaves that up to the audience to interpret for themselves, the same way it leaves a lot of the horror up to our imagination.
In me?
In what is probably the most famous scene from the movie, Irena stalks her husband's assistant to her apartment pool. She's convinced that they are either in the middle of or on the verge of starting an affair.
Would it be all right if I went down to see her?
Of course, dearie. Right down them steps there. Oh, gee, I can't tonight.
As Alice undresses for a late-night swim, she hears something in the shadows. The scene is played with a straight face. We see the water reflecting on the walls almost as much as we see the woman in the pool. There's no music to raise the tension, only the sound of her paddling around. And then her screams. Lewton was worried that audiences wouldn't buy it, that they would laugh when they saw her terrified of practically nothing, but apparently the scene was so effective that people in theaters were screaming with her. Lewton and Tourneur had taken their budget restrictions and turned them into opportunities for creative innovation. It's the classic fear of the unknown. What we don't see is often scarier than what we do see. A shadow on a wall is enough to sell the idea of mortal danger. In reality, that shadow is Tourneur's hand in front of a spotlight. Shadow and sound are two key parts of Cat People, and two of the reasons why it stands out all these years later. They create this mood that digs past the surface, revealing just enough for us to believe what the movie is suggesting, while also leaving room for us to fabricate the rest in our own heads. Cats and intimacy, those were Lewton's fears. I was surprised to learn just how personal this movie was to him. He was very uncomfortable with physical touch, and ever since he was a kid, listening to his grandmother's Russian folktales about leopards and tigers, he wasn't a big fan of felines either. By the end, however, it's pretty clear where his sympathies lie. Irena's death is tragic, almost welcomed by her. We never actually see whether she dies as herself or as the monster. With her fur coat and her lifeless pose, she could be either one. And we feel sorry for her either way. Cat People was a huge hit. It launched Lewton's career, and he went on to make several more B-movie horrors with RKO during the 40s, including a sequel called The Curse of the Cat People. I think this film earned its reputation for the artistry and care that went into making what could have easily been just another low-budget audience pleaser, and I think Lewton is the reason why. If anything, the fact that this movie is still remembered to this day proves that. It goes to show just how much you can do with whatever little you have.